Greetings to all who joined even before start. We are waiting for a couple of minutes and we'll start at 11 sharp. So dear colleagues, we are waiting for 1 more minute to start. So we have 11 o'clock Kiev time and we are starting. Dear friends, colleagues, my name is Roman Nitsovich. I'm Research Director of Dixie Group Analytics Center. I'm ready to greet you all at our next event in the series of energy security talks, which is dedicated to discussion of the future situation in the energy system of Ukraine in the summer. Before we start, I will talk about a couple of technical nuances. We have a simultaneous interpretation at our event, and participants can choose the audio channel by pressing the globe icon in the bottom. We are recording the event. All the materials presented today and the recording will be sent to all registered participants. I would also like to express my gratitude to International Renaissance Foundation, as this event is organized by our analytical center in the framework of the project Improving Tomorrow's Energy Security with support of International Renaissance Foundation. Again, we have interpretation, materials, and recording will be provided. So let's start. Traditionally, we conduct this risk assessment because we think that it's not only an element of energy security policy and it should be done by government as well, but we also believe that it's important topic for the society, so we try to forecast the availability of energy resources like electricity, natural gas before the seasons of increased consumption or the periods when we form this stockpile of the resources for the heating season, especially for gas. We use methodology of European networks of operators, ENSO E, ENSO G, of course, taking into account the data which we can assess some assumptions because it's martial law and wartime, so we don't have the full information. Maybe that's good that we don't have this information, which means that the enemy also doesn't have that and is unable to assess in detail the situation. Nevertheless, with this approach, we try to do our forecast and provide recommendations for better preparation for possible potential crisis or emergencies. At this point, I would like to end my introduction. Once again, remind you about interpretation. All the materials will be sent to registered participants. And now allow me to give the floor to my colleague, Elena Lopenko, who is the General Manager for Security and Sustainability, to present our outlook for the electricity. So, Elena, the floor is yours. Thank you, Roman. Good morning, everybody, dear colleagues, participants, guests. Thank you for joining us today. The topic is extremely important for the future of Ukraine because the sufficiency of electricity is crucial for economy and for the households. And I express my gratitude to Roman, who highlighted the data insufficiency problem. So our outlook is just estimation based on the dynamics which we see during recent 3 years. So we compare open data statistics as of before 2022 and compare that with the data which we can find in open access, and based on that we build our outlooks and describe tendencies. So I would like to ask my colleagues to show the presentation. So today I'm going to speak about the current state of energy sector, about consumption tendencies, our dependency on imports, and we'll try to forecast the possible scenarios, and that will be a starting point to understand what's going on in energy system. We'll start from the basis of our energy system, the generation. The nuclear generation is the main source of energy, which covers the most of the demand. So we lost presentation for some time. Colleagues, please show the presentation. So, Elena, I would propose you to continue. So, it's worth saying that the structure of the balance, if we speak about the percentage, is the same. So the balance structure is more or less same like we had in the summer 2021 or winter 2022, depending on what season we analyze. But still, war led to huge damage to our infrastructure. So the measuring units, the numbers of availability of generation capacity decreased. Another starting point for our research is the UNDP research, which was published in 2022, where they noted that the available capacity decreased because of war damage, and we use that data in our research too. We see that according to data as of May 2025, we see gradual recovery, and Ministry of Energy said that 4.5 megawatts of capacity was restored, and that's crucial for this summer season. The availability of thermal generation is more than 4.5 gigawatts, hydro more than 4 gigawatts, but when forming the outlook for summer season, we take into account that availability of water resources is crucial for hydropower, and lack of water in this season is not good for such generation. For heating power plants, summer season is season of active repairs, and for nuclear generation, the maximum available energy units in repairs at the same time is 4. So we take the average number of 2 or 3 energy units with combined capacity of 1.3 gigawatts will be in repair state. Next slide, please. Dixie Group gathers a lot of information from open sources. We have the Energy Map resource, and there is a chapter which traces published data dealing with blackouts, power outages connected with military hostilities. We understand that this information may not be complete, but it definitely shows that frontline regions suffer a lot. The damages are more relevant and so on, and that complicates the repairs process. We tried in this outlook to use slightly different approach to evaluating consumption level during the year, and we got a small decrease after the last year. So since the start of the full-scale war, consumption decreased, the shrinkage of economy was about 30%, and the consumption of electricity follows that trend. According to estimation of Dixie Group, the consumption decreased by 3 to 6% compared to previous year. This situation reflects the situation in economy and shows that we should adapt to new realia. The industry is forced to reduce consumption, and that influences the energy balance. This year we'll have a decrease of consumption over a year because we had a very warm winter with lower consumption peaks. To cover the demand, we use import actively. Ukraine works to increase the volume of electricity imports. And last summer, as you see on the chart, this factor was one of the key factors to cover the demand and to decrease the amount of outages. Last summer, import reached the record numbers. We had peak in June, 850,000 megawatt hours, and it was more than 1.4 million megawatt hours per year. This year, import was also very important, and for this year, we forecast that the level of import per month will be approximately 500,000, 800,000 megawatts per month. It highlights our vulnerability because import is still important part of our energy system, of our balance, but still it shows that this integration with energy system of Europe is a important step towards stable work of our energy sector. So we move in the right direction. So let's try to consider three scenarios for summer 2025, which take into account various factors. We tried to take into account temperature, weather, because temperature both in winter and in summer influences consumption a lot. So as we see from the dynamics of the years before the full-scale invasion, so we see that the summer consumption maximum was equal to winter maximum, which was hard to imagine 20 years ago. So let's start with scenario number one, when we have no new attacks on the power system and moderate temperature conditions without long-lasting critical temperatures, which lead to this similarity in summer and winter peaks. So in these scenarios, we can give the example like we prepared the winter outlooks. So we had everything ready by the 15th of November, but on the 17th of November, just before our presentation, the massive attack happened, and we changed our projections. We increased the possible deficit because of these powerful attacks. But this negative prognosis didn't came to life, but it was more like the optimistic one, which we prepared before the shelling. So we believe that this scenario is one of the most probable, the moderate one. And even with the attacks, we believe that our anti-aircraft system and physical protection will play their role. So in this scenario, we prognose the absence of new attacks, moderate temperature conditions, and the consumption no more than 16 gigawatts, which we had in winter. From that, nuclear power plants will generate more than 6 gigawatts. 2 or 3 power units will be in the repairs, but still the thermal power plants about 2 gigawatts. Maybe this number is too high. We'll have some repairs of energy units, but without the full usage of import capacity, we believe that thermal power plants will cover for the maximum. The repairs should be conducted quickly to cover the consumption. It will be important if we'll have the same situation with hydro resources. And the renewable energy sources should also be taken into account. Here we have some lower numbers, but we take into account the maximum load in evenings. In summer, it's 9 p.m. when the solar generation is not such effective, and the minimum load is in the night when the sun doesn't generate electricity. And of course, in daytime, the huge share of demand will be covered by the renewable energy sources, and this share, as of now, can reach 20%. Next slide. We can continue with the second scenario. So if we have hot weather, again, we come back to winter, and where do we get these numbers? The expected maximum demand this winter was 18 gigawatts, which was forecasted by almost all experts and authorities, but winter was warm and consumption was slightly lower. So when we prognose for extreme temperatures, we took as a basis winter prognosis. And even if we restore the generation capacity, which was conducted last year and goes on, still the possible deficit in energy system can reach 10 to 15%. The nuclear power plant will be generating 6.4 gigawatts because the repair campaign should be conducted as planned. Thermal power plants 4 gigawatts, hydro energy slightly higher, 2.5 gigawatts, and here we also have the factor of reduced commercial import. I emphasize that commercial import without emergency assistance, it can decrease to 1.5 gigawatts. Why? Because these risk factors influencing us will also influence neighboring countries, and high demand will lead to higher prices, which will complicate commercial imports and covering demand inside of Ukraine. We also have scenario number 3, which covers the continued destruction. That's a pessimistic scenario which cannot be avoided because there are war risks which should be taken into account when we form our prognosis. The recent winter demonstrated that that's important not only for energy electricity segment but also for gas segment. In the next part we will take a look at our prognosis for pumping gas to storage. But for this scenario, we analyze the recent Russian attacks, and we understood that even in the case of strikes, it won't lead to serious disbalance in the energy system, and the maximum deficit will reach 15-20%, but with moderate temperature regime. If the temperature is going to be extreme as well, it will be a very negative scenario, so we don't consider that. So here we decrease the generation at thermal power plants and hydro because these facilities are aims for Russian strikes usually. So we see that there is a possible deficit even with imports, and it can reach 2.7 gigawatts, and it will be approximately 16-20% of consumption. So summing up, I would like to say that we have the continued restoration, and Ukraine faces the next hard summer season, and the challenges are damage of infrastructure, dependence of imports, and influence of weather. But the best scenario allows us to finish summer without outages, but it depends on stability of energy system and the moderate weather. In the worst scenario, we are going to prepare for deficit of capacity and possible limitations. So we continue the restoration of infrastructure, build our cooperation with partners, and invest into energy efficiency. Thank you.
First of all, I would like to say that our assessment, this is our prognosis. We are not saying that we are providing any guarantees, and of course, we will be grateful for the feedback and your comments and remarks, any questions. Probably we will change our prognosis in the process of the discussion that we have today. The second thing I would like to say, I see the discussion in the chat. Please, if you have questions, please write the questions in the chat. I will read these questions out loud during questions and answers session. And this is a great opportunity. And please, I would like to see your virtual hand in order to give you the floor. Also, we have here Mr. Roman Bekozarov from D-Trading. It's not a secret that beyond and besides physical parameters, equipment, there is a commercial component, how the markets are functioning. Olena mentioned the import issue. Roman, the question to you, the increase, what will we have in summer on the markets? Do you think that the prices will be volatile? Hello, colleagues. Many thanks for the invitation to join this discussion. I hope that you hear me well. Thank you. Speaking of your question, it's important to pay attention to the fact how our energy balance will happen, and this how the electricity market will work. Now we understand that import of electricity is one of the key parameters that can balance energy system, but we also have to understand that we have not only physical limitations but economic limitations too, price limitations. At the moment in May, we see the level of consumption is quite low. We know that in order to balance the system, we must understand that price limitations, they delegate the solutions on the limitation of consumption, or Ukrenergo in terms of emergency support. In order to solve this, we must cancel press cap or look at them in these market and late hours, because this is the peak load, and in summer we have air conditioning and there will be an increase. This is important for physical and economic environment. This will be a challenge. Speaking of volatile prices, it will depend upon the weather. We saw in May how a lot of gloomy days provided a low level of generating and quite high prices. And we understand that the weather is summer and the consumption will be high. It will be balanced more or less, but we also must understand the way out. We can work on export potential. I mean here that now we are limited 650 megawatts. And in order to balance physical in day hours and economically, or in the example of prices, we should increase export potential. It will help us to physically balance the system and also allow to increase. And let's remember about the green tariff. Thank you. Many thanks to Roman. One more question. Are there preconditions for more active usage of two sides agreements or tools of risk mitigation? It's a great question, because now we see a lot of requests from the final customers, and they rely on that they will get access to long-term agreements and contracts in order to have prognosis for planning their working activities. It will be beneficial for the it will be very beneficial if we have stable consumption. It is a basis for prognosis, for balancing the system. But now from the side of customers, there is such a demand from internal generating. There is no such movement. The majority of agreements is about monthly basis is a big question. And even now, Energoatom provides offers the month of June, and this is about concerns from the side of final consumers. But here we must understand that we need to solve the question of the question of long term. We the opt price of price is understanding for, but the main problem is now we have only 24 hours stocks, and but this demand is existing, and it interesting for the customers, and it can be an alternative vision. Excuse me, the sound is bad. We need somehow to solve about we need to talk about long-term potential. How do you assess the readiness of key players towards such steps? I think they are ready. They understand that this will be a step for future. It will be a better understanding for everybody on the market. It depends upon the communication and technical readiness to get prepared to this process. But I hope that in third and fourth quarter we will be ready for this step, and during the fourth quarter, autumn and winter, the most difficult season for our system, and we will be able to get transparent agreements for import for long-term perspective. Many thanks, Mr. Roman. Maybe you have some questions or remarks. More or less, your prognosis is in compliance with reality. In summer, we will see our energy blocks will come back from the repair. And on the basis what Elena presented, we must understand that the main challenge in summer for energy balance depends upon profiles. Now we see a distributed generating solar part, and we see the daily hours, and we can see the prices. So this question is really important, and export can be a solution. And also early hours and late hours, we see the efficacy, and we also should think about the flexibility and providing for the market appropriate tools. Market can work with these tools. Customers understand what is going on in Europe. If consumption is going up, then the neighboring countries have the same situation. We see in Hungary, in Romania, late hours, 15,000 hryvnias. We must provide more flexible tools for the market in order to balance the situation. Many thanks. Dear colleagues, let's start the session with questions and answers. Let me start from the questions in chat. And once again, if you want to ask your question, please show your virtual hand. Laura Posishkart from chat asks, whether our assessment considers domestic solar stations that are not joined to the networks. What is the impact and what will be the impact for the profile of usage of energy consumption? I can start here. Partially Roman explained, but from technical point of view, it's very difficult to calculate how much capacity is joined in households. It's very difficult to calculate and very difficult to say how much equipment are existing. If there is a solar panel, this is one thing. If it is a more developed equipment, that's another story. That's why it's difficult to calculate for the household. We see the general dynamics, of course, partially. The decrease of consumption is a result partially of solar panels installation. You asked about the consequences for the system. For the system, it's quite difficult. We invited the Ukrenergo representative to join our discussion, but unfortunately he couldn't join. It is a good question to Ukrenergo because they can explain how difficult it is to cope with this solar capacity, because the equipment that traditionally should work with the basic load, this equipment have even to stop for the daily hours when solar capacity is mighty. And imagine, what does it mean to stop energy block? Afterwards, it is a risk of emergency because this is a steam that is going via the pumps, and the consequences for the equipment can be really bad. And prices on the market, when all these volumes were of capacity works for market, this is good. This is about the prices. When there is a solar station for the household, this energy is no, we have the situation when we have prices in daily hours, and simultaneously we are paying for the balance. This is the real situation. Now there are a lot of discussions for keeping the energy for energy storage, and this can be a tool that can save us from this disbalance in the system. Olena, are we talking about industrial equipment for storage? It helps to balance the demand, and by generating the electricity and accumulating it in the daytime, it can be used in nighttime. And industrial equipment can help to balance for more flexibility of our system. Mr. Roman, any comments from your side? I will be brief because Alana explained very well. The biggest challenge is it is impossible to provide good prognosis. We have a retrospective understanding because when there is the end of the month and you understand the capacity considering the temperature and load, and only afterwards you can understand how to provide prognosis. The biggest challenge is tools that Ukrenergo can use from load release and impossible of prognosis of this type of generating, because this type of generating decreases consumption that can't be put into prognosis, and it is if biogas, for example, is a participant of the market, of balancing market, but small households, they're not joined to the lines, and this is a problem because mass basic load is increasing. And we have very small slots to cope. Many thanks to Mr. Roman. Dear participants, maybe somebody wants to ask a question with your voice, then show your hand virtually, please. I see a question in chat. About the temperature influence, that temperature influences more than rocket attacks. As I mentioned, we observed November and December. Last year, we prepared our reports when our prognosis was more negative. And there were a lot of comments in media that our prognosis was wrong. And on the 17th of November and the 25th of December,
on the 70th of
it was a segment
November
of
and in December were aimed
energy.
at the generation and the
If you
Ukrenergo
look at the statistics,
facilities. If we look at the amount of missiles, we can say that they were not larger than the ones at the start of the year. So we come to the conclusion that the physical defense works, it's effective, the first, second, third level is installed, and that we also have the strengthened anti-aircraft defense, and it allows us to decrease the military risks in our outlook and base more on the increase or decrease in consumption depending on the temperature and weather, because that's the factor which influences in our energy system, not only on the consumption, like when we have high heat and everybody uses air conditioning, but it also influences the availability of water resources. We have a large share of hydro energy, that's green energy, and that's our positive side. And when we remember the last year, when we had high floods, the hydro share was up to 20 and more percent in balance, but during the summer heat, we feel the lack of hydro resources. We must save them, and the evening peak is harder to deal with. So that factor of temperature is crucial. And if we are able to forecast more accurately the weather conditions before the next winter or summer season, our outlooks will be more accurate as well. Thank you, Elena. In general, how dependent on weather is the situation if we talk about the higher share of renewable energy photovoltaics, for example? Yeah, that's the correct point, that weather influences not only consumption but generation as well. So the solar generation and wind generation, unfortunately, its share is much lower than the one of solar, because although it's more stable and able to cover for evening peak and to replace other types of generation during night hours. So with higher integration of renewables, we are more dependent on weather. And we have a question about gas. Yeah, I see that question, but let's finish the electricity block. Maybe someone has more question. Feel free to ask and to raise your hand if you still have some questions. The last chance for questions. So I see the question in the chat. So do renewable energy sources like solar, do they make Ukrainian energy system more adapted to failures? How renewables support energy security now? Again, I've partially answered that question. It's a very complicated question, and it should be addressed to Ukrenergo because it's in their responsibility to balance. On the one side, last summer during daytime, during solar activity, after 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., renewables allowed to avoid outages even after these terrible attacks, which we witnessed since the March last year, aimed at generation renewables, were the factor which allowed us to avoid outages. That's a positive, that's good. But lack of storage systems to store electricity doesn't make our system flexible and drains the resources of other types of generation because they have to maneuver, to stop, to allow the solar generation to give its power, which is limited as well, and Ukrenergo balances using other types of generation. So on one side, it supports the energy security, but on the other hand, it's a challenge for those who do the balancing of energy system. Thank you, Mr. Roman. I have a short comment concerning dealing with this question. Yeah, it provides flexibility, taking into account the conditions we live in, I mean war. So it 100% provides flexibility because it's distributed generation. It decreases concentration in one infrastructure facility. So that's a positive, but renewables, as Elena said, requires the development of other technologies like storage, and the energy system should move step by step to providing more opportunities for balancing. So only renewables are not the answer to all the problems because balancing is hard. To get the full answer to this question, we should implement market coupling, so the full technical and economical synchronization with Europe, and that will allow us not only using own generation and capacity to balance the system, but also to use European options and variants of balancing our energy system. Thank you, Roman. So the final chance to ask a question about outlooks concerning energy system in terms of electricity for the summer. So let's proceed with the situation on gas market. So we see the audience is asking questions about that in chat. So Elena, I give the floor to you to present our outlooks concerning gas. So I remembered the idea that we present this outlook not for the first time, and the structure is the same. Usually we present electricity first and next the gas, and if we look at the dynamics of the guest numbers, everybody is interested in electricity, and then some people leave and less people watch the gas presentation. But this winter changed the situation, and let's look if the amount of participants will change, because the gas supply for the next winter is critical and is interesting to many people. So let's start. The second part of my presentation deals with gas supply, and the main task of the summer season is not only to provide stable supply of gas, but also to prepare for the next autumn and winter season and stockpile for the next heating season. We'll consider the current situation, outlooks for gas storage, strategic goals, steps necessary to complete the heating season. Our analysis is based on the consumption data, imports, underground gas storage facilities work, and based on this data, we create our outlook, the restoration of infrastructure, and the difficulties of gas market, and the stop of Russian gas transit. Let's start with the second slide. So the energy security of Ukraine this year is still under pressure because of war. Unfortunately, we witness attacks at the gas infrastructure last year, this year, namely the gas production facilities. The transit of Russian gas stopped, and with such situation, we come and actually entered the season of stockpiling gas before the next season. Unfortunately, we don't have official data of these targets before the next season. We estimate this number at no less than 15 billion cubic meters in storage before the start of heating season. And heating season we consider as starting not on the 15th of October, but on the 1st of November. And before that date, we must accumulate the certain amount of gas in storage. This number is higher than last year. Last year, we managed to accumulate a little bit less than 13 billion cubic meters, and this difference in 2 billion cubic meters must be that strategic buffer in conditions of instability which we witness during autumn and winter season. So let's start with consumption. Last year, Ukraine used almost 22 billion cubic meters of gas, which is 2.5% more than the previous year. The demand stabilized in the third and second quarter, and in the last quarter, there was a slight increase in demand, which was caused by the changes in the structure of electricity generation and sources which use gas in its work. Compared the 2022, when gas consumption decreased, in 2023, this decrease was only 2.3%. This year, this calendar year, we expect the consumption of 21 billion cubic meters, taking into account the continued hostilities which influence the consumption of gas by the households and businesses in Ukraine. And we also take into account possible future strikes on energy sector. Next slide, we consider import of gas statistic data. Gas imports is critically important for energy security. Previous season was complete without gas imports, and this season of 23-24 was concluded with the gas of own production. But this year, imports will play a crucial role in preparation for this season. The main sources of imports are Hungary, Slovak Republic, and Poland. Also, Ukraine has contracts for 300 million cubic meters of LNG gas through terminals. It all shows that we are gradually diversifying gas sources. According to various estimations which we find in media, we have to import from 4 to 8 billion of cubic meters of gas. And according to average estimations, the financial load amounts to $2.53 billion. This funding is partially covered by EBRD credits and grants from various countries like Norway, and we prepared our own outlooks and estimations according to 3 scenarios. So the underground gas storage facilities are the basis of energy security of Ukraine, and we prepared these presentations slightly a couple of days before today, and we know that by the 20th approximately of May, approximately 6 billion cubic meters of gas were accumulated, and by the end of May, the gas amount in storage facilities will reach 6.75 billion cubic meters, and our chart shows the volume of working gas without the technical volumes. This the commercial gas, and it demonstrates the dynamics which shows that it shows the level of amount of gas in storage facilities compared to 2 previous years. So this dynamics demonstrated on the slide shows unprecedented challenges that we have this year, and this anti-record of the amount which we had have at the start of the season. And we have to speed up the accumulation of the resource, taking into account all possible risks of possible future damage of infrastructure. So that's the first scenario, optimistic scenario, and we reach this well, impressive numbers in gas storage, but still the military risks are important. This year we had 8 attacks on gas production and transportation facilities. We had the powerful strike in February when we saw the decrease of our capacities by 40 or 50%. Later, we saw reports that by April it was restored partially, but we understand that that's a difficult, time-consuming process, and that's why imports is critical, and the challenges are in various factors, including finding financial resources to purchase gas. So the first scenario is optimistic. Our goal is to stockpile 15 billion cubic meters. And what do we need for that? We start from our estimated gas volume as of 31st of May at the level of 6.75 billion cubic meters, and we forecast a slight decrease in gas production because of military strikes and the situation on the private gas production market. According to this scenario, imports must amount to 5 billion cubic meters, and it shows that we need to increase pumping gas to storage facilities starting from June to the level of 22 million cubic meters per day, and that will allow us to reach this level by the November. We also slightly changed the consumption numbers because we understand that in summer it's not too high, but this consumption covers not only summer season, but the whole period from June to November, and we cannot forecast the weather for October, but that can influence the market. So these numbers change based on the various weather forecast for autumn.
This is the medium scenario. We didn't get the numbers from the last year, so this is an approximate scenario. And we looked at the level in order to go out of this deep gap of the slide you have just seen. We need to speed up the tendency of gas storage, and we must pump gas with the speed of 24 million cubometers for 24 hours since June. I think that the general input will be 3.7 billion of cubic meters. Next slide, please. Here you can see the negative scenario. Oh, sorry. Oh, this one is a good one. Yeah, an appropriate one. According to this scenario, we had a prognosis with the a decrease of 20% of production. Here we're talking about the season of pumping, and we had a prognosis of import reduction. Here some indicators can appear. For example, financial provision of this import. That's why we're talking here about only 2 billion of cubic meters. So the speed will be approximate as we have now April and May. Now a little bit we have a pessimistic and negative scenario, and that's why we need to speed up the volumes of import. And the next slide, please. According to the worst scenario, we will have even the lower indicators in comparison to the last year. It is not an indicator of catastrophe, but it underlines that we will have to increase the volumes of import, try to find money for more valuable import, then it will change the seasonal prices. Also, we developed a few statements that can be a key to success in order to move from negative scenario to the medium or optimistic positive scenario. It's not a set of recommendations, but still, this is the idea we need to come and to implement a plan for the next years. We need to focus on long-term agreements. Now we have all tools to do this. We have guaranteed capacities. We have sources of funds. These all must become our priority task before the winter. I mean, long-term agreements. Long-term agreements are more expensive at 10 to 15%. And it's important to use the tools of a joint procurement that can help us to mitigate the losses. We heard that as Ukraine actively tries to a new load on European market can appear and the prices can go up, but these volumes we must import. Even in the best scenario, this is actually a small part of entire import of European Union, so it won't be a key indicator for the price. The next thing, a constant monitoring and control of the speed of pumping. We can't wait here. We can't wait and do nothing. We must get the speed of pumping in terms of the big quantity of days. as many days as we can get, we should get. The speed of pumping must be as high as it is possible to get the positive scenario. The next thing I would like to share with you, internal funds and international funds granting for Naftogaz, state guarantees. It's all about money. Also, potentially, we can get a support from the budget for the procurement, and all these things must be solved ASAP. And also, we have a private sector. It influences directly on the balance of gas. The recommendations say that stock more market selling, it will attract private sector, and potentially this can positively affect our readiness for the next season. These steps and further modernization of our structure, our storages, our security levels, these steps will become a key for the easiest future without emergencies, without catastrophic scenarios, and with actually positive scenario. This is not a negative scenario. This is not something that should shock us. This is more about the understanding what will happen if we do nothing. Many thanks, Madam Olena. Especially thank you for the remark about the official task and mission of the storage. Unfortunately, we can't hear this task in terms of current year. Today, we heard a lot about our energy and gas security and the indicator of production. We are thinking about different scenarios, and we can hear Artem Petrenko, executive director, who knows all about the industry. Mr. Artem, speaking of a level of our production, can it cover a seasonal increase of consumption? And how can we support the industry in recent conditions, and how can we get prepared for the challenges? Hello, dear colleagues. Thank you for the invitation. In fact, if we are talking about the production, of course, some numbers can't be shown from our side, but Madam Olana described the picture, I think. We have a high level of uncertainty what will happen next. Let's consider this, because we have war, and the war influences all our scenarios. Now I hope you see my presentation. I'll try to be brief. During the full-scale invasion, Russians tried to destroy not only generation capacities, but also our production. And for your understanding, from the first days of full-scale invasion, the Russians attacked our production, and February in March 2025, this was the period when they severely attacked our production. The Russians were very active. State and private companies both suffered, and it resulted in immediate loss of production. This is a technological process, and if some parameters happens, then this stop is implemented. I suppose you remember that we lost 30, 40, 50% of production. You saw these messages in media, but it works a little bit in different way. The companies do their best to recover their objects, as the colleagues say. For 2 years, we didn't import much gas, but firstly, 99% we used gas produced in Ukraine. Aggressor knew our weak spots. The real situation is the decrease of production, but the colleagues recover the objects, do whatever they can, but I can't share the details. Please understand, this is the question of security, but the production decreased, the need for import increased, and thankfully people were not murdered, but the equipment was destroyed, and this is about quite big funds because equipment was damaged and destroyed. Now we need to build some objects from scratch, but still a company do all they can to recover. They continue to work. The drilling takes place. Despite everything, we got an absolute record in drilling. And when international experts asks, how can you do this in current circumstances? And we do. Speaking of import, in order to be brief, I won't describe all the scenarios, but we have basic scenario in public field that this year we have to import because of the attacks, and these volumes 4 to 5 billion of cubes, we need this, but the production of gas is a key priority for our life and work. Naftogaz, as you mentioned, speaks of agreements on some volumes. We have information about the first quarter. There are numbers that are shown. And thanks to the governmental support, the natural gas was bought. But once again, we don't know all the information, and no information can go into public. And you can see some numbers on the slide. And of course, we don't import and don't transport Russian gas. So our sources are, it's about the western borders, Hungary, Poland, Slovakia. And what we see now, Hungary, Poland, Slovakia, once again. In general, speaking of trends on production, but also let's consider market. What really changed? For 3 years, our market is closed. For private drillers, export is closed. The prices decreased in comparison to Europe. And 2.5 years we lived with internal Ukrainian prices. Now you can see the dynamics on the slide. Unfortunately, the production decreased because of Russian attacks in state and private companies. The volumes of gas is sold to Naftogaz. That's why less gas for commercial consumers and gas goes down for Europe because the general situation is not understandable and uncertain. Speaking of demand, basically the demand exists and it will increase. And of course, we see the news when our eastern neighbors say that Ukraine will die in cold. There is a demand, the industry must buy gas in order to use it in winter. So de facto in Ukraine, gas for commercial consumers is more expensive, but this is understandable considering the situation with generation and Russian attacks. What will happen next, we will see, because in 2 to 3 weeks everything can change, but now there is internal consumption, and of course if the existing tendency will continue, then commercial sector can start importing for their own needs. Now some details can be provided because of the war, but what happened for 3 months? We have news about the distribution of production according to Укрнафта, Одеська ОРП. In 2013, it was provided to the Americans, but now new investor appeared. Now Ukrnafta took this field for work. Ukrnafta started all necessary searches and investigations. Potentially, this is a very important field. Also, Межигірська and Свічанська ОРП.
So currently, the Ministry of Energy and the Interinstitutional Commission are going to adopt the tender documentation. These are the documents with all requirements to all the papers and everything. And after the publication of this document, companies from Ukraine and abroad will be able, during these 3 months, file their application to participate in these 3 tenders. Before the publication of these documents, we are waiting and following this process because everybody are interested in this work and investment into Ukrainian resources. Let me remind you that in the west of Ukraine, the company from the group of Invest Nadra Service is the only company which is producing the carbohydrates according to production sharing agreement. This process is successful. The gas is produced, taxes are paid, and we expect that the following production sharing agreements will work in the western Ukraine and the east as well. And we hope that the full-scale war will end and we'll get investment in these projects. because currently we work in the force majeure conditions because there are a lot of issues connected with war. That was the short presentation, and I will be glad to answer any additional questions. Thank you. Of course, we have the possibility to ask questions, to answer questions. Let's start with two questions from the chat. The first one from Vitaly. How will the development of gas-supplied distributed generation affect overall energy consumption levels? Maybe the target of 15 billion cubic meters will not be sufficient. And the second question from Tatiana Temnyuk. So what prevents you from cooperating with other traders and the private sector? So thank you for your question. I'll try to answer quickly. So concerning the distributed generation, the distributed generation is connected by industrial producers, so that leads to the demand for natural gas for electricity production. So as for the overall situation, we have a demand for natural gas, and we have two possibilities for companies who install these power units. So they can buy gas on the market, or we have PSO on Naftogaz who is obliged to send gas to such businesses, and that stimulates the companies to make decision and install such units and produce electricity. And I would like to say that I heard different views. We cannot say that everybody rushed into this sector. Of course, we have a boom in this sector, but that's not for everyone because of security reasons, because of economic reasons. Sometimes companies see that units will not lead to return of investment, or they are afraid of high gas prices. So the decision depends of many factors, and there is no single model. But yes, there is distributed generation, and that stimulates demand for natural gas. As for the second question, I would like to clarify this question because I don't completely understand that. Maybe Tatiana will clarify. So greetings, colleagues. Hello. That was question more to the colleagues from Dixie, because in your presentation you mentioned ways to the solving some problems with the support of Naftogaz and solving this situation with low volumes of pumping gas into storage and problems with import. And one of the points was cooperation with traders to decrease price, etc. So that's question to you. What prevents you or why Naftogaz do not cooperate, because experts believe that there should be cooperation with private traders from Ukraine. So why don't they cooperate? How do you think? What do you think? And the question to Artyom, if you can say, so is government or state helping the private sector to reconstruct after the attacks? And do private companies have incentives to increase production, because there are some issues with market and there are not many industrial clients, etc. So let's give the floor to Elena and Artem, because we are reaching the end of the meeting. So I wanted to provide the example. So if we in Ukraine had a decentralized gas market like stock trading, there are a lot of private companies who build production facilities to produce gas, and all these mechanisms which are now centralized, financed by budget and grants, would be unnecessary. So we want to do everything to make our market more liberal. In such case, companies who can buy gas, pump gas into storage, and then sell gas at the market price. So all these companies will participate in all these stockpiling processes, etc. Now we are at the start of this way, but we are moving into that direction. So if Naftogaz don't have funds to cover the portfolio of its consumers, both PSO and commercial clients, maybe Naftogaz can transfer part of this work to commercial sector, but that's political question. And again, if the government doesn't have mechanisms to implement that, then it should be done using market mechanisms. Artem, thank you. Well, as for the question concerning private companies and incentives, the government adopted important decision this year. We also asked for such things after the attack. Equipment was damaged and connection to gas transport system issue arised. So there is a possibility to build new pipelines and connect in the different spots. And the government agreed to help us, and I express my gratitude to the government and the Ministry of Energy. They simplified the construction, well, legal aspects of construction process to restore the damaged facilities in the gas production sphere, and they also simplified the process of connection to gas transport system, which is important in the context of war. As for the demand, and I can say that the situation is quite simple. We need transparent legislation, transparent taxation, and that's the only thing that works. So we insist to keep the taxation and regulation system stable. And when we have demand for gas, that demand is the incentive for development. So we now see that after attacks, the production decreased, but the demand is the same, and that stimulates companies to work, and companies drill and work, and we simply should understand that such situation can stimulate company to drill not 2 wells but 3 wells per year. And this situation depends on various factors, and the colleagues should understand that taking into account the Russian aggression, this is all very risky. You can build something and that will be destroyed, and that complicates everything. Thank you, colleagues. Unfortunately, we ran out of time. I see a number of questions in chat. One of them deals with the liberalization of markets, lifting of the moratorium on changes of prices for households. Obviously, these questions are connected, and there is a question on energy units, and there is some issues with legislation and martial law. So this transfer is connected to the lifting of martial law. So allow me to thank you all and make a small conclusion. So we talked about the outlook for the season, and a lot depends on the summer season, and it will influence next heating season. In the electricity section, we discussed influence of shellings and weather and decisions on export and long-term booking of capacities, market caps, and we discussed the things that should be scaled for better balancing of renewables. As in gas section, the stockpiling of resource for winter is important, and here we have not only financial issues, but also need to support activity of production companies who find a possibility not only to restore after attacks, but drill actively and find new deposits. We also discussed the influence of gas generation on the demand and how market mechanisms can help solve the problem with resource stockpiling. I would like to express my gratitude to our great speakers and to Dixie Group team and the International Renaissance Foundation for support of that project. As I said at the start of the meeting, all the materials and recordings will be sent to all registered participants, and in the end of the season, closer to the heating season, we'll be glad to speak about the outlooks for winter. Now we are speaking about summer outlook. So thanks again for your attention, for your activity, and we see that Elena, we see that the number of participants didn't decrease, it increased, which shows the higher attention to both markets, to both systems, and gas and electricity are both important elements of our energy security. So at this moment, I would like to thank you all again and wish you a peaceful and quiet and stable day, week, and season and year. Thank you.